Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 4 of The Vinyl Cut. My name is Chris Wardell. I am a music journalist and a professional music appreciator and music collector. And with me is my co-host, Kevin Ream, producer and musician extraordinaire. And we are coming to you from his Cut and Run studio in East Lansing, Michigan. Hey, how's it going, Kevin?
Good, Chris. How you doing today?
Yeah, not too bad, not too bad.
Yeah, episode 4. I think you had a great idea before we jump into John Lennon's Imagine, his second official solo album.
Yeah.
You had a great idea that we should possibly talk about the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
Yeah, so as of today's recording, the list of the 2020 inductees was announced, and I'm going right off the top of my head, but I think I remember everyone. Kevin, you can jump in. You have the list, but so that's Doobie Brothers, T-Rex, and then Whitney Houston, Notorious B.I.G., Depeche Mode, 9 Inch Nails.
That's a list, huh?
Yeah, and we're always hesitant to discuss this because before we hit record, I'm talking about how, as an institution, the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame is kind of a joke.
Yeah, it's obviously very political within certain circles of the music business. And
exactly.
The record companies that still exist and Rock and Rolling Stone magazine.
Yeah, it's totally dominated by Rolling Stone magazine and the publisher Jan Wenner, and my whole argument is there's artists getting in that aren't even rock and roll.
Sure.
Whitney Houston.
Right. I guess. It's been like this for a long time. It's a music hall of fame.
Exactly.
You can't really say it's an American music hall of fame. It's not a rock and roll hall of fame. It's a pop music hall of fame now. I mean, I think that's fair.
Yeah, and there's a fine line with rap too, right? Because that kind of goes back and forth between rap and rock and roll. Like the Beastie Boys are in, and I think that they absolutely should be in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. But
sure,
I think, and no offense, I like the music, but Tupac and Notorious B.I.G. are just not rock and roll to me. Maybe the attitude of their music, but that's about it.
Yeah, that's exactly the attitude of hip hop. At some point, overtook the attitude of rock and roll. Like once in a while, rock and roll shines its face, but rap is the new rock and roll and has been for a while. I guess attitude wise and social defiance.
Yeah. Yep. So it's every year I always enjoy hopping on Facebook and starting a shit show with everybody, and
yeah, it's hilarious.
It's always fun and get over like 30 comments. But anybody inducted that you're a fan of this year? Doobies. What do you think about the Doobies?
I like the Doobies. I don't know if I ever decide to put a Doobie Brother album on. They're a little classic rocky for me, and that's my fault for, I don't know. I shouldn't categorize them as that, but that is what they appear to be to me, and they're a good band. They're a great band. Are they a Hall of Fame band? I don't know.
Do you take your Doobies with Michael McDonald or without?
Oh, Jesus Christ. Yeah, without. I'm afraid.
I gotta take him with, but
I get it.
It's me.
I get it. It's just Michael McDonald's a Linus blanket. I don't know. He's too safe and calm.
Fair enough.
I don't hate Michael McDonald. It's just it's warm milk.
Yeah, I'm with you. But speaking of music that's not safe, well, I guess they're more safe nowadays. But Nine Inch Nails getting in. What are your thoughts?
I thought you had a good point in conversation that they probably shouldn't be in, nor Depeche Mode before Kraftwerk. I think the Pioneers. I think that's a fair argument that the Pioneers should be in before the Clones.
Yeah, I mean, I'm happy that Nine Inch Nails is in. I think Trent Reznor is a brilliant composer, and, especially the music he's making these days. It's very like the soundtrack work he's doing, and
yeah, I always heard good songs with him, like songs.
Mm-hmm.
Trent Reznor, through all the, quote unquote robot music, there was always a song.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought he always chose very interesting sounds to compose his songs with. And again, it's not necessarily my cup of tea, but Nine Inch Nails, I perceive them as a Hall of Fame band. Whether it's too early or not, I don't know.
Yeah. Great performer too. Those guys were always amazing live, and going even further to another influence of Nine Inch Nails, Depeche Mode. Where do you stand on Depeche Mode?
Similar with as Nine Inch Nails. Growing up in the 80s, I wasn't a big fan of the radio. I kind of just lived out of a LP box crate throughout the 80s. And I only heard, their hits. I didn't have an older sibling to hand stuff down to me. I had my dad's old records from the 60s.
Fair enough.
So, and growing out in the country, I don't know. I never heard a whole lot of Depeche Mode growing up. I remember Personal Jesus. I think that's the first one I remember. I mean, so that gives you a little bit of a perception. Mm-hmm. But again, there's some songs there. Yeah. And I'm not necessarily the biggest fan of the production, but I do hear some songs there.
All right. Fair enough. Whitney Houston aside, we brought up a list of rock and roll Hall of Fame snubs. Sure. And I don't want to take everyone off the list, but just looking at some big ones that are not in for me.
It's a big list.
Carole King absolutely deserves to be in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
Snubbed for the past 36 years.
Unreal. Captain Beefheart, avant-garde.
Sure.
Frank Zappa collaborator. Absolutely needs to be in there.
Jim Croce? He had kind of a short career.
Yeah.
MC5.
God, dude, fucking MC5 need to be in.
Who's more rock and roll? Whitney Houston or the Monkees?
Oh, the Monkees.
Okay. They're not in.
I think the Monkees deserve to be in, because I stick up for the Monkees. I like the Monkees, actually. Like, they started off as a TV joke band, but they eventually learned how to play their instruments. Michael Nesmith is a legit musician. Yeah,
Wes Tkachuk, the bass player in our band, many years ago, long before we were in a band together, gave me some Mike Nesmith, and it's surprisingly good. Yeah, just like you're saying, it's some really good folk rock.
Their album Head, when they tackled psychedelic rock. Check out the song Porpoise Song. That might be a mini challenge for you, is listen to the Porpoise song.
Okay, yeah, I'm not familiar.
It's definitely very psychedelic, and It was poorly conceived. It was like their version of Sgt. Pepper, or
Okay. The Monkees version of Sgt. Pepper.
it was their concept album. It's their Tommy.
Monkees had a concept album.
And they made a movie.
No, I know Head. I've seen Head.
Yeah,
Well, that's a big
Head,
pile of shit.
Yeah.
Jack Nicholson was a producer or a writer, something like that. He was involved.
Yep. I think he was a director, producer, and Frank Zappa is in it. And Michael Nesmith dresses up as Frank Zappa, and Frank Zappa dresses up as Michael Nesmith. So
they had all the gags.
Yeah,
just brought them over from the TV show.
But, yeah.
Who else? It's amazing. Harry Nilsson.
Harry Nilsson.
That's crazy.
Ozzy. I think Ozzy should be in solo.
I don't. Yeah, I'm not an Ozzy fan, honestly, but yeah, you're absolutely right. He should be in.
Yeah, and I don't know. There's so many. I'm all about
Three Dog Night and Warren Zevon.
Warren Zevon, definitely. Three Dog Night, I don't know about.
I was thinking, oddly enough, I was thinking of Three Dog Night in the shower tonight because I remember that. This was my line of thought. I was thinking about our Kraftwerk conversation. And I was like, oh yeah, that's robot music. And then I started thinking of Buck Rogers' Robot. Well, like that's the music that he would like. Which made me think of, oh yeah, Buck Rogers' favorite band is Three Dog Night. And I did not realize they were not in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Yeah, they're borderline. I don't think there's a strong argument for them.
A huge one for me is King Crimson. They need to be in.
Agree. Again, not the biggest fan of this band since I turned 16. Bad Company should probably be in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
Hell yeah. Paul Rogers, Free.
He's one of the greatest voices I've ever heard.
What are you doing, guys?
Hi, Louie.
What are you doing, guys?
We're talking about rock and roll.
Hi, Louie.
Who's your favorite rock and roll band? Gene? Oh,
Kiss?
From Kiss? Oh, I get it. That's his favorite. That's Chris's favorite too.
What's the baby?
Oh, he left the baby at home.
Yeah, I don't have the baby.
Where's the mommy?
Mommy's at home with the baby.
Yep.
Wait, the baby's in the car.
No, not that. What, did you look in the window?
No.
Okay. All right. Will you go upstairs, please, so we can finish this? Mommy's going to give you dinner. It's all ready in the oven.
No.
One. Oh, do you want a bath?
If I had a quarter for every time Kevin has threatened a bath.
I did it, okay? Saturday.
And you didn't even wash it with soap, right?
There was soap. And,
No, it was more of a rinse.
well, it was more of a rinse, but there was soap.
Oh, that's gross.
The water was soapy.
Oh, it was.
All right, Louis, be good. Devo?
Yeah, Devo.
You said Motorhead already, didn't you?
No, I haven't mentioned them, but yeah, Judas Priest.
Yeah. No, they both should be in. Somebody I got into real late and real recently, XTC.
Oh, yeah. I don't know much about them, but they're...
I don't either, but I am slowly discovering almost every song I check out is just fucking great.
Nice. You know what else is interesting? If I'm noticing is some famous musicians' bands are not in, like Frank Zappa's Mothers.
Oh, okay, they weren't included.
Paul McCartney's Wings.
That's odd.
Yeah.
I were they the biggest selling band of the 70s? I once read that somewhere, and I don't believe. I mean, Led Zeppelin and the Stones, everybody was selling rag. I know they had the biggest tour of the 70s, that 76 tour.
Mm-hmm.
I guess that was the biggest tour and of all time up to that point. I didn't realize that.
Wow. I didn't either.
But yeah, Denny Lane, shit. He got in with the Moody's, though.
Mm-hmm.
At least he's in there. He should be.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Thumbs down.
Yeah. Hold on. I've got this list here, and there's a couple. Okay. Should LL Cool J be in before Notorious B.I.G.?
LL Cool J's in, isn't he?
No.
No, I thought he was in. I thought he was inducted.
Did he just go in?
I'm pretty sure, but regardless, yes, he should be in before Notorious B.I.G. But again, we know Rock and Roll Hall of Fame doesn't go off influence.
Pixies and Jane's Addiction?
Yeah. I think in another couple years we'll see the wave of alternative bands.
Yeah, because the Soundgardens, the
Sonic Youth,
Alice in Chains, Smashing Pumpkins, Sonic Youth maybe should be one of the first to go. Nirvana got in.
Yeah.
Pearl Jam got in too.
Pearl
didn't
Jam's
it?
in. Yeah.
Rage, Stone Temple Pilots.
Yeah.
I saw that the Dave Matthews Band fans had 1 million people sign a petition to get him in.
Yeah, now they're protesting. As our buddies Matt and Mike know, you don't mess with the DMB fans. Right?
That's surprising because I never heard of the Sex Pistols fans rioting over. Where's Motorhead fans? Right? Are you telling me the Dave Matthews Band fans are the ones that are gonna rattle the cage more than anyone?
They're more organized, I guess.
You're right. They're more sober than the rest of them.
They have desk jobs, all the DMB fans.
Oh, wow. Oh, boy. I'm not answering to that at Mort's.
Yeah, if you can plug him in just for now, because we can maybe use the same amp or something. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4.
It was Ascot, England, early summer, and we just kind of said, okay, why not? Okay, let's do it. And we invited some friends, and we'd have breakfast, and then we just go right into the studio. So it was really like a home cooking, and that's how Imagine was made. But we didn't know it was going to be that big.
Okay, John Lennon's Imagine. His second official solo album. Released September 9th, 1971. And recorded in February, just a couple months after the release of Plastic Ono Band, his first solo album. He recorded almost all of this at his Tittenhurst estate in Ascot. He had a recording studio built into his house off of the kitchen so that when the musicians arrived, they could show up, have a meal, talk about what they were going to do. Then they'd go in the studio. John would teach them the song, and then they would record the song. They did go to New York to do some overdubs. King Curtis plays sax on the album. They did all those tracks there at the record plant in New York. There was also some overdubs at Abbey Road too. Yeah. But most of it was recorded at his house, and there's tons of great film. They were filming a movie. It was going to be called Working Class Hero. So the whole making of this album was recorded, which ended up they ended up shelving it and released most of that footage in the 1988 album or movie Imagine. Mm-hmm. And just recently on Netflix, they released Above Us Only Sky, which is more of the original intent of the film rather than the overview like Imagine of his.
Yeah, I'll have to check that out.
Yeah, it's great, and it's completely focused on the making of Imagine and that time.
I'm astonished at how many musicians played on this album for, in my opinion, as sparse of an album that it is.
I agree. I've always thought of this album and Working Class, I keep wanting to call it Working Class Hero, but Plastic Ono Band as like version 1 and version 2, almost like it was a double album. I've always thought of them so similarly.
They sound very similar.
But I think it's just the songs, because the musicians and the instruments on this album, there's so much more.
Yeah,
compared
tons
to the
more.
last album, and I just never perceived it that way.
And it's all very subtle. Like, there's members of the New York Philharmonic on it, but it doesn't jump out at you. So.
No, those tracks were also produced by Phil Spector and had a heavy hand in orchestrating the string sections, which were recorded in New York, also at the record plant.
Of course, old creepy Phil's there.
And John loved working with him.
Jesus.
George too? Well, I don't think George worked with him after All Things Must Pass. Mm-hmm. But John, almost all of his solo stuff was produced by him. Almost.
Since we started this project and I've been doing research, one thing that's jumped out at me is the Beatle universe. It was all the same people minus Paul.
Kind of.
Because George is on this album,
yeah,
but Ringo's not.
Ringo was on the last
Ringo
album.
was on the last one. And Phil Spector's still there.
I love
all the guys from Badfinger.
Yeah, Klaus is playing bass again. Klaus Vormann
is still there.
Yeah, George's contribution to this album, his slide work and his finger picking on some of these songs are just great. Some of his best guitar playing, if you ask me. And Nicky Hopkins, the other keyboard player. I mean, maybe Billy Preston was on tour or something.
Yeah.
But yeah, Nicky Hopkins, amazing on this album.
And 3 drummers, all amazing drummers.
Yeah.
Jim Gordon, who was in Derek and the Dominoes. Jim Keltner, who Bob Dylan called
the 6th Wilbur.
the greatest session musician of all time.
No kidding.
And then you have Alan White, who was in Yes.
Yeah. And the story with Alan White is John just went into London one night, wanted to go do some drinking, go see some bands, saw whatever band Alan White was playing drums in.
Yeah, who knows?
And that is exactly what happened. And Alan White just happened to be in the right place at the right time where John Lennon wanted to go have some drinks. And that's how he got this gig. He was also the drummer for Peace in Toronto. So he'd known him for a couple years.
It would have had to have been Yes, I think.
It could have been. I'm not familiar how early Yes. It would have had to have been 69 that they'd met.
I think Yes' first album came out in 71.
Yeah, it could
have to
very well be Yes.
And check that.
Okay, here's Alan White talking about working with Phil Spector.
He was always kind of a really weird kind of character, never really said much, but, you walk in there and he had something sounding like totally different from what it sounded like in the studio. So I guess that's part of being a good producer. Neither him, Phil Spector, or John ever told me what to play. I just sit down there and I think, well, they're going to want me to do this. And they said, no, whatever you're doing, keep playing it. It's perfect. That's all he ever said to me. And so I just kept doing what I was doing. It seemed to fit with what was going on.
Okay, so your perception of working with Phil Spector is, at least mine is a super control freak, probably. I mean, but it sounds to me like he and John just wanted players to play. It didn't sound like it was that they were too micromanaged.
Yeah, I think as I mentioned in episode 1, my problem with Phil Spector is everything has this sheen on it. He just, I don't know, overproduces.
No, he does. He's and I think what Phil Spector used to do had a place in music at one time. I do like the stuff he recorded with John. I like, for the most part, what he did on All Things Must Pass. Although George's reissue of All Things Must Pass in I forget when it was, like the 90s or 2000. I think it was 2000,
Mm-hmm.
something like that. Was he stripped a lot of the production back a little bit, and it sounds great. But yeah, he liked to overdub things over and over again just to get the wall of sound and the strings.
Yeah, but what works for the Ronettes doesn't necessarily work for...
Yeah, no, and I think that's
rock.
fair. And there might be moments in this album where you could argue those things. Let's just talk very briefly about what the other Beatles were doing before we completely jump in the album.
What were the other Beatles doing?
Well, Ringo released It Don't Come Easy on April 14th
Oh, great jam.
of 1970, though. So, right after Sentimental Journey, he wrote and recorded and released It Don't Come Easy on April 14th of 1970. And then at the end of 70, he released a second solo album, Buku of Blues.
I had me big plans to go out and take me all over this land. To see me the world, I left my sweet girl and gave it a whirl. But now here I stand alongside the road, with holes in my soul, in my shoes, and bukus of blue. Oh, sweet magnolia, breath carried over the marsh by a breeze from the Gulf.
Sounds like Nashville Skyline.
A really bad Nashville song.
And, well, the Jordanaires are on this album. Jerry Reed, Charlie Daniels, Charlie McCoy, Pete Drake, who produced it. So it's all these Nashville greats.
Charlie Daniels played with Leonard Cohen.
Did he really?
Yeah, he was one of his backing musicians at the Isle of Wight concert.
No kidding.
Yeah.
Well, that might be a Brian Johnston connection there, because he also produced some of that stuff that Charlie played with Bob Dylan on. Blonde on Blonde. Okay. Moving on to Paul releases Ram. Ooh. Second.
Controversial.
Too many people going underground. Too many reaching for a piece of cake. Too many people pulled and pushed around. Too many waiting for that lucky break. That was your first mistake. You took your lucky break and broke it in two. Now what can be done for you? You broke it in two.
So apparently this song's about John.
Yeah, I would say so.
He also attacked John's sweet tooth with the piece of cake comment. That was uncalled for.
What was the controversy of the album cover? He's holding the ram. Is that was McCartney's way of saying you fucked me over?
No, well, there's other instances that on this album that they think he is talking about the Beatles. No, I don't know. That may be. I hadn't heard that. There is.
That's why it was called Ram, because John rammed him in the ass.
Well,
basically.
on the back of Ram is a photograph of two Beatles. One's fucking the other one.
Oh, okay. Maybe that's what I'm thinking.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there's two actual Beatles. One's mounted on top of the other one. And then on the back of Imagine is a picture of John bent over like Paul was holding the ram, except for he's holding a pig. That's supposed to be aimed at Paul.
Yeah, I mean, that aside, Ram is it's very pastoral and it's a very earthy album, and it's probably Paul's most honest work, I think.
I think it's his finest work. Whenever somebody asks me for a good McCartney album to listen to, I always say Ram. I mean, it's I think it's by far his best work as a solo artist. He wrote all these songs apparently pretty quickly, because this is right after McCartney, which a lot of McCartney was songs that he was going to do with the Beatles at the end of the career. So this is pretty much all his writing. And apparently he wrote 40-something songs in the period that he wrote these, and they span the rest of his career up until like 2000 and something, where he just kind of finished them along as he went. So he had some, he really hunkered down once the Beatles were over and wrote a lot of songs.
I'll say.
And these, I'm assuming, are the finest of those, since this is the album that he made out of it. Yeah, it's a great one. It reached number 1 in the UK, number 2 in the US. Ringo said he didn't think there was a good tune on the album. It was platinum, so I mean, these guys are still having number ones with everything they release. Still. Yeah. And then George. George does not release an album. He's still living off of All Things Must Pass, which was released very late in 1970. But he did put together in 71 the concert for Bangladesh. So yeah, Bangladesh, the concert for Bangladesh, the first superstar benefit concert to ever be put together.
Yeah. Inspiration for No Nukes was probably the next one. And then, of course, there was the U.S. festival, but that really didn't benefit anything but
us.
Steve Wozniak's pockets.
But there's some decent documentaries on that too.
Yeah, I love the concert for Bangladesh. I have it on vinyl, and it's a fun listen. And the Beware of Darkness on that is fantastic.
Unbelievable. Bob Dylan doing coming. Well, George wasn't even sure Bob was going to show up.
Yeah.
And the version of Just Like a Woman he does with George and Leon Russell harmonizing with him is by far the best version of that song I've ever heard.
Yeah. And I love it that, again, the Harrison's backup band is the Apple Records slave labor Badfinger.
Yeah. Yeah, well, yeah, that's they were used pretty often. Well, actually by George, more so maybe than any of the rest.
Pete Ham from Badfinger backs George on Here Comes the Sun on that album.
Really?
Yep. If you watch the
Here Comes the Sun.
Yeah.
Oh, you mean okay, at the concert?
At the
live
concert.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, they're there. Ringo looked fantastic. But yeah, this was a time that George was working with Bob Dylan a little bit here and there still. Let's hear a little something from Neil Aspinall.
A lot of humility for George at that stage in his life. You know, when the Beatles had split up, he'd had a huge hit album with All Things Must Pass. He'd never fronted a big show like that before. This was the first time ever for him. So it took a lot of humility on his part to be able to call around and get people to do him favors with the obvious risk, you know, of being turned down.
If not for you, window hold no spell.
So yeah, they ended up raising $250,000. They did 2 shows that day, an early afternoon show and an evening show. And well done, George.
Yeah.
So John had a couple singles before the album of Imagine coming out. The first one was just a couple months after the release of Plastic Ono Band, Power to the People. So, John, coming out strong. Great song. I can see how it doesn't fit the album. Not that they knew what the album was yet. But,
it was such a baffling time in music for me. All these non-album singles that were released.
yeah, that is weird, isn't it?
And then, of course, they get re-released on the album later.
Exactly. Like, Do the Oz. This was, for some reason, they included this at the end of Plastic Ono Band. Crazy Groove.
Yeah.
And John had one more single that he rushed out before this album. He said he always wanted to write a timeless Christmas song.
Nah.
And this is it.
And you won't just begun. And so this is Christmas.
It's a requirement every holiday season that I listen to this song at least 50 times.
Whether you want to or not.
Yoko's great on this song.
Yes.
Her shrieking.
She's getting it on. So yeah, I mean, just with the singles alone, I mean that's a Power to the People was a pretty good sized hit, and then obviously Happy Christmas. I mean, could be as big a selling song of all time just because people still buy it, you know.
Maybe we should just go and do Imagine then.
Was this one a ballad?
Yeah, come on, I'll teach you.
Sure.
Yeah. Imagine no possessions. I wonder if you can. No need for greed or hunger. A brotherhood of man. Imagine all the people sharing all the world. You may say,
What is this game that somehow this is America and then just across the field is Canada, and that you have to have all kinds of papers and pictures and stamps and passports, and the concept of imagining no countries, imagining no religion, not imagining no God, although you're entitled to do that too. Imagining no denominations, imagining that we revere Jesus Christ, Mohammed, Krishna, Milarepa equally. We don't have to worship either one, that we don't have to, but imagine there's no Catholic Protestant, no Jew Christian, that we allow it all, freedom of religion for real.
no hell below us, above us only sky. Imagine all the people living for today. Imagine there's no country.
You know it. You've heard it more times than the Christmas song, whether you wanted to or not.
The elephant in the room.
Yeah.
I think this is his most overrated song.
Well, for how highly rated it is, I mean, it's hard for it to not be overrated.
It's, I don't know. If I'm gonna listen to some John Lennon, Imagine is not the first song that
No.
I want to put on.
And I don't know the last time I've honestly listened to it. It's like Stairway to Heaven or so many other songs that I've known for the past at least 10 years. I shouldn't listen to that or else I'm never going to like it again. Mm-hmm. And this falls in that category. It's just such a huge hit that I've had to stay away from it for a long time.
Yeah.
Just so that I could enjoy it again.
Fair enough.
But I understand what you're saying. It's the universal lyrics.
Which he got into a fair amount of trouble for.
Oh yeah.
Oh, there was a lot of controversy because, of course, he was saying, you know, you don't have to believe in a god, or
Sure.
He was saying that they're all equal in his eyes, and of course that ruffled some feathers.
Hey, yeah.
Or he was saying there can be religion or there can be no religion.
Sure.
It's up to you.
And well, especially back then, that was pretty controversial. Not that it isn't still now, but I honestly think it is less by far compared to 1971. I think it's less by far from when I grew up in the 80s even. I mean...
I just know he was always defending the song, and it was just as not as controversial, but almost on par with when he said the Beatles were bigger than Jesus.
Sure. No, and I think John was conscious of these things. I think he knew what he was doing.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Here's the next song, Crippled.
You can go to church and sing a hymn. You can judge me by the color of my skin. You can live a lie till you die. One thing you can
I love this song. I know it's a pretty simple, brainless 145 that anybody could write, but I think it's a great tune and great lyrics.
Do you think he's digging at Paul? Kind of sounds like it.
I think he's digging at himself.
Oh, okay.
I think he's talking about himself. I think he's,
Yeah.
he's really in the same place as Paul. I mean, he might care a little less, I think.
A little more therapy coming out.
Sure.
A little more primal scream therapy.
Sure. I think he's just being honest and talking about what's going on with him and how he needs to put a brave face on since he is in the spotlight and in the eye of the public. And I think it's a great lyric, a good tune. I like Crippled Inside.
The thing with Beatles fans were all looking for closure after the breakup, and they were looking for the songs from all of the different members to give that to them. But what you had was Paul and John working through their stuff. George finally spreading his wings and flying, and
yeah, it's like he worked his stuff out and now he's over it, in some way.
And Ringo is, being Ringo and whatever, being silly, but
trying to float.
Yeah, and you have Paul and John going back and forth at each other, their emotions coming out sideways, in my opinion.
I think they were such tight friends for so long and went through some crazy shit that nobody else has ever lived through together. Mm-hmm. And I think no matter what, I think they're emotional guys, and it's gonna leak out.
Yep.
Jealous Guy.
Love this song.
Yeah, I think it's one of his finest solo songs. And it's just all around great. I think Phil did him justice. The strings are immaculate. John's vocal is amazing. He was always very self-conscious of his voice, and that's what led them to a lot of the double tracking in the Beatles and effects on the vocals, which was ahead of its time, because John was always self-conscious of his voice, but this is amazing. I think it's a great vocal, maybe his best.
Yeah, it's just it's a great romantic song, and I don't know who hasn't gone through these emotions,
Sure. No, and then the thought of that it's normal and it's okay to be a little jealous, like, to a degree. Mm-hmm. It means you really care. Let's have a listen a little. I'm sorry, go ahead.
I think his first wife would disagree.
Let's hear It's So Hard. She might agree with this one. King Curtis on the sax.
Kind of a precursor to whatever gets you through the night.
Yeah, like a slower version. Again, you know, a pretty 1-4-5-ish. Not a song John really spent too much time on the chords.
Clearly.
But it's okay.
Yeah.
It's King Curtis helps. And I'm a sucker for slow, dirty blues. So I don't mind it, but I could understand how somebody wouldn't be into that one. How about we just jump to something a little bit more interesting? I don't want to be a soldier.
Very appropriate for the time.
I love the drumming. It's definitely not Ringo. Not to slight Ringo. I love Ringo's drumming, but that is that's the guy that plays for Yes.
Old Alan. It definitely sounds like.
That is tight. I really like this one. It's more of a groove than anything.
It's kind of the underrated gem on this album.
It really is. It is a really tight groove. It doesn't go too many places, but it's such a great feeling. And I like
it's like Working Class Hero Part 2.
Yeah, a little bit. Except for from a $10 million mansion. All right. Let's get into Give Me Some Truth.
I'm sick and tired of hearing things from uptight, short-sighted, narrow-minded hypocritics. All I want is the truth.
This sounds like it could be on Abbey Road.
Yeah, this is so good.
It's a great song.
Just give me some truth. No short head, yellow belly, son of tricky dick is gonna mother her but top so meager, just a pocket full of hope. Money for dough, money for road.
Obviously, George. So yeah, that's one of my favorites.
I mean, there's not much more that can be said about that song. It's a jam.
Let's get into something a little softer. This is Oh My Love. That's George on the Les Paul.
First time in my life, my eyes are wide open. Oh, my lover, for the first time in my life, my eyes can see. I see the wind, oh, I see
the trees. Everything is clear in my heart.
There's no drums or guitar in this song.
See the clouds.
There's George's finger picking right there. Alan White is playing the finger cymbals.
Both John and Nicky on piano.
Yes.
Interesting.
Yeah, there's some great footage of them recording this in that documentary, Above Us Only Sky, and it's...
I'll have to watch that.
Yeah, it's great.
This has a very UK folk rock feel to it.
Yeah, I could have seen this being on Plastic Ono Band, maybe because it's so sparse.
Yeah.
But it's a great song. I think one of the highlights on the album for this. I would rather listen to this than Imagine. Jeez.
Yeah.
All right, let's get into the controversial song.
So Sergeant Pepper took you by surprise. You better see right through that mother's eye. Those freaks was right when they said you was dead.
Yeah. I mean, every line.
The lyrics are so overt that it's almost ridiculous. Like, I think he was just trying so hard.
You don't pick a fight with John Lennon. There's no winning.
Yeah.
I mean, every line of this song is a punch. He's not whispering, piece of cake.
Exactly.
John is punching you in the face. Paul is smacking you in the back of the head. Great song.
Yeah, definitely a great song. The lyrics. He's just trying too hard. I think, as our good buddy Sean often says, "You're trying too hard."
I think I don't mind it. I think it's
No, I mean, don't get me wrong. It's a great song, but it's...
Sure. It's on the money. He didn't leave a whole lot to the imagination like Paul did.
Mm-hmm.
But I wouldn't expect anything else from John Lennon, though, I think.
Yeah.
Paul did a very Paul thing. John's doing a very John thing.
Paul walked up and smacked John in the face with a glove and said, "I challenge you to a duel."
Yeah.
And
John smashed his beer mug in Paul's face immediately after.
Yeah. Anyway.
Yes. Okay, this next song's a good one too. This is called How.
How can I go forward when I don't know which way to turn?
Very lush, very spectre-y. If there was a song on this album that was maybe overdone, probably this one.
Yeah.
How can I have feeling when I don't know if it's a feeling?
Meaty, very meaty. Yeah, and the bridge gets really sweet. It's very McCartney Wings-ish.
I was just gonna say, it sounds like the fucking Long and Winding Road.
It does. It does.
Brutal.
How can I
It's a little too much for me, personally. Well, throughout these recordings, John could get testy, and then this is in the middle of a take for Oh Yoko. John and Phil Spector are trying to sing the backing vocals, and the engineer just can't get it to the right place.
Hey, you sing Giving Us in the Middle of the Night instead of Cloud.
That's not the one. Remember, I'll tell you.
Yeah, we're both doing harmony again to it.
Just wait a second, let me explain, okay?
What's the matter with you, Philip? It's the last fucking verse.
In the middle of the cloud, I called your name, oh Yoko, and he stopped here once, remember? And that's the one you're playing now. We don't want that one. We want the one that
And then into this pop tune.
all new.
Look, the end of the song is just like the fucking rest of it. We're gonna sing the harmonies to Oh Yoko. Come on.
All the fighting and arguing for this song.
I love Nicky Hopkins' piano playing on this song.
Yeah, Nicky's great. First time he played harmonica since Rocky Raccoon.
Really?
Yep.
Yeah, and, you know, in 64, 65, he was always playing it, wearing his Dylan hat and strapping the harmonica on.
In the middle of a bath. In the middle of a bath, I call your name.
Yeah, I can't argue. I cannot argue. So, Chris, that was the last song of the album. My perception. What do you think? What do you think?
I give it a 6 out of 10.
You know what?
Yeah, 6, 7 out of 10. It's like Plastic Ono Band light. Plastic Ono Band Part 2.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I think it is like Plastic Ono Band. I think he didn't quite have the songs for this album that he did for Plastic Ono Band. I would have loved to hear the musicians on this album play the Plastic Ono Band. But I don't know, it's a pretty magical combination they had with that first album with Ringo, Preston, and George, Klaus.
I just think John and Paul were just in a foot race to outdo themselves, and some songs hit the mark, others completely missed, and I also think whether they said it or not, they felt they had an obligation to their fans to get music out, which caused them to just release stuff like Oh Yoko.
I agree. I think John. I think he must have finished off Jealous Guy, because that was originally Child of Nature from the Escher demos in '68.
Yeah, imagine if that would have came out as a Beatles.
It could have been on the White Album as early as that. But it wasn't ready, and it's what it ended up as. I don't think it could have been any better. You got Imagine. You got, man. There's. I Don't Want to Be a Soldier. I agree. I'm more of a 7 out of 10 for this one. I'm a 9 out of 10 for Plastic Ono Band.
Yeah, I'm a 10 out of 10 on that one.
That makes total sense. It's gonna be impossible for me to put a 10 on something.
Yeah. Fun listen though.
Yeah, I enjoy it. It's probably my top 3 John Lennon albums.
What's our next album?
Okay, our next album is sometime in New York City.
Live one.
It ain't fair, John Sinclair, in the staff all breathing air.
What's the live album that has New York City in it?
That is, I think, live in New York City, if I'm not wrong.
Oh, okay.
This is sometime in New York City. This is filled with it's got John Sinclair on there. It's got Attica State. It's almost all protest songs.
Yeah.
And well, we'll get into it. It's something different. It's definitely a different album than the last two, which I think is great. But yeah, I look forward to that one. That's going to be fun.
Sounds good.
All right. Well, thank you all for listening. We appreciate you. And
yeah, thank you to all 5 of you out there listening. No, I'm just kidding. We totally appreciate anyone that's tuning in and listening right now.
Yes, we have another challenge coming up.
Yes.
Chris is...
Dr. Dog, right?
Yeah, we're going to check out Dr. Dog's album, Easy Beat. And then we'll get on to what will be episode 6, John Lennon's
Sometime in New York City.
You got it. All right, thank you all for hanging around.
Thanks, everyone. This video and or podcast includes copyrighted material for the sole purpose of commentary, review, and education regarding the copyrighted material. The Vinyl Cut makes no claims of ownership of any of this copyrighted material. This use is protected under United States law, specifically Section 107 of the Copyright Act, as it applies to fair use of copyrighted material for the purpose of criticism and commentary. If you are the owner of any copyrighted material appearing here and wish for it not to be utilized for this purpose, please contact us directly at wardellc@msu.edu and be sure to check out the Vinyl Cut on Facebook.